Thank you. It's nice to be back another year. When you're in your 70s, every day is a gift. And I appreciate you all taking your time to visit us this year and to participate. In the study of the ageless wisdom, we're taught, and this is one of the keynotes of the treatise on cosmic fire, that there are three types of motion. There's rotary motion, which is really the third aspect of deity, cyclic spiral, which is the consciousness or second aspect of deity, and then the first ray is progressive motion, which is the shortest distance between 2 points, but really esoterically it's no motion at all. It's a point of stillness in which all this other work takes place. So astrology needs, particularly esoteric astrology, come to the recognition that the planets don't actually revolve around the sun in a rotary way as simple as we have been taught. The planets are dragged in an electrical magnetic vacuum vertically as they spiral, as the sun dragging these other planets through space. Now, I don't think this is going to change astrological configurations, and I'm not attempting to suggest that, but there's been so many discoveries in science along the astronomy lines that will give credibility and a much deeper base to esoteric astrology, because there's a missing link between the inner esoteric astrological and basic astronomy. Where is the bridge? When is science ever going to be able to scan, or span, I should say, that gap? And that's what we're going to explore in the workshop, with particular emphasis on Saturn being the main synthesizing agent for the triple aspect of the mind, higher, intermediate, and lower. Okay, the presentation is called The Center of Living Light, and there's a few introductory statements I'd like to make. Okay, 2025, a lot of interest, speculation, what's going to take place, what is potentially coming. There's a constant questioning around the idea of new esoteric teachings. In my opinion, it may not be just new technical information, but may be comprised of additional teaching techniques that emphasize the development of the intuition through the theme of color, sound, and light. Light of the personality, soul, the light of the masters, and the light of hierarchy. This new approach will be clearly built on past work and the use of new visualization techniques that include graphs, charts, tabulations, and animations. A clear expansion of the wonderful charts and tabulations DK has given us in his many works. If it is true that one picture is worth 1,000 words, what then can we say of an animation that can be made up of thousands of images that can be presented seamlessly? Viewing images helps the student to visualize what is hidden, and this is particularly important to second-ray types, but can be adopted by all ray types for deeper comprehension. DK has said this about the power to visualize. Thus, through the use of the imagination and visualization, the desire body, the emotional nature are brought in line with the soul. This visualization, second quote, leads to synthesis, to causal development and expansion, and eventually conducts a man into the presence of the master. People often think when you're creating thought forms and you're using the astral warmth combined with the mental structure, that the astral component of this, which is an extension of the Buddhic, a much higher level, that it really plays a lesser role, that the mind is more important. This is not necessarily true. They have to work in unity and together. And that visualization can actually lead to the presence of the master. That's a pretty powerful statement. So don't take for granted your charts, your tabulations, your symbols, because when viewed in the right interior concentration, they can unlock many mysteries that simply reading something may not give you. The unfoldment of the sense of vision and of the sense of synthesis through visualization will lead to a sense of livingness in form. All this creative work with the third aspect of divinity, the Mahachohan and these so-called lesser ashrams, although I say that with a certain reservation because we know the seventh ray is now considered a major ray, whereas in earlier cycles it would be one of the rays of attribute. So, the lower mind. The student should not attempt to skip the lower mind in their eagerness to understand higher spiritual forces, nor should the lower mind be overdeveloped at the expense of contact with more subtle angelic and Davic kingdoms. The lower mind should always attempt to find its rightful place, not as master, but as an interpreting and grounding agent for these higher causal forces. What are we attempting to do in this presentation? Create a presentation of the ageless wisdom teachings that shows visually and through audio-visual aids some of these ideas of spiritual energy and force and what may be happening behind the outer appearance of the form. Attempt to present the ageless wisdom teachings in a form that is more compatible with modern discipleship training. DK has affirmed consistently that the perennial philosophy is always the same, but there has to be a new and more dynamic presentation every few generations because humanity is evolving and is much more sensitive. Create a newer type of presentation that builds on the important foundation of earlier contribution, but attempts to appeal more to the abstract mind and the spiritual intuition. Assists with building the rainbow bridge scientifically and according to your own six-fold ray chart and their unique qualities of colored light. DK has continuously affirmed that initiation is the ability to enter into light and within that light find greater light. And we're going to give practical demonstrations of how that works with your different rays. Okay, a few quotes by HPB and DK that will help us understand the importance of light, color, and the sphere. What happens to exactitude when we begin to blur the clear dividing lines between the rays and the planes, or the different spiritual bodies or centers? We must understand that the exactitude of the aspirant, probationer, and disciple need to develop clear lines, of coherent and organized thoughts. It may become automatic and unconscious at some future point, and will prepare the way for what DK called divine simplicity or synthesis. On this thought, DK has this to say: when the task is done, when all the centers are living spheres of outgoing radiatory activity, they swing into each other's orbit so that the initiate becomes a center of living light and not a composite of 7 radiant centers. Think on this. Another quote by the Tibetan from Letters in Occult Meditation: the value of what I impart now consists in this, that in the study of color, which is one form of the study of vibration, comes the ability to understand personal vibration, to attune that vibration to the egoic one, and to synthesize it later with that of the master. all of your rays, whether in your six-fold ray chart or astrologically, are qualities of light. And this is what we are going to work with more intimately in the age of Aquarius. We're going to have charts that are custom built for our particular level of development and what may be the next step forward. HPB, everything is spheroidal. The symbol of an egg also expresses the fact taught in occultism that the primordial form of everything manifested from atom to globe, from man to angel, is spheroidal, a serpent swallowing its tail. To realize the meaning, however, the sphere must be thought of as seen from its center. So all the work that you do with charts, tabulations, particularly symbols, you have to imagine you are in the middle of that symbol looking out, that you become it. Okay, all members of the human family are gathered and placed according to their rhythm, quality, heat, light, magnetic influence, radiation, activity. This tabulation is but an extension of the major one, which groups all egos under the divisions of color, sound, and vibration. This is a little chart that shows in a very simple way the 7 human types. And you go from personality ray integration. You see at the top, next level, soul ray integration, and then monadic ray. And each one of those shifts or changes or developments requires an understanding of light in its many manifestations, in its many colored hues. If you see at the second tier here on the soul level, even though all those egoic lotuses are all basically the same, each one in the background has its unique color because of its ray. And DK says that every soul ray, depending on its ray, has that unique quality built in, irrespective of how many petals are unfolded. Okay. Now, the top, you can see how DK is laid out in his books, a 5-fold ray chart. I have simply added the monadic ray. And I understand that this is speculation, but bear with me as we move through this and use your imagination when you see some of these charts and some of these animations and project what you see your rays may be into these unique colors. So you get a sense of participation. If you leave this presentation with just a bunch of information and facts, I will have miserably failed in my high mission. The opportunity for direct, irrefutable experience of the rays and these different principles is always here. But I am building, I'm using the 5th ray, the 3rd ray to build my case, so to speak. Because when people go, wow, they'll have background, they'll have a foundation. And it's not how high you fly, it's do you put a foundation underneath it? So when you come back from the heavens, you got a landing zone. You got feet to put down. And you can interpret and you can ground through the lower mind. Okay, underneath the rays laid out here is a 6-fold ray chart. You see the same identical chart, only in color. Okay, before we actually get into these animations, I want to just briefly recapitulate the stages of building the Antakarana through color and sound. Now, most of you are so well versed in this, I'm just going to skip over it quickly. To the far left, just below where it says 6-fold ray chart, going from left to right, you have first stage personality integration. And if you had the egoic lotus, you could actually show how petals unfold during each one of these stages. But that's a little beyond our time frame at this time. When the lower mind, when the emotional body and the physical etheric are integrated into one body of light with the personality ray dominating in its quality of light, you're ready now to develop a link in alignment with the soul. Personality is the red, the light blue second ray is of course, the second ray, and it's the soul quality. When the personality ray can fuse with the soul ray, and the personality ray becomes a sub-ray of the soul, you have a much more powerful and integrated unit of light. Third level, where it says dual rays. When the soul and personality are integrated in building the Antakarana, and this is actually the higher phase of building the Antakarana, the personality ray, with its unique quality of light, and the soul ray, with its unique quality of light, is driven up onto triadic levels. This is actually what is considered the acme of alignment. You are using your own personalized rays to do white magic. And this is why when you have intention, visualization, projection in the 3 stages of building the Antakarana, projection is very important because you drive it with the power of the will, with the will of the soul up onto triadic levels. This is not a passive type of meditation. Okay, then you get to the 4th stage where you have the soul fully integrated, moving up into the upper triad. It now is no longer needed and it begins to disintegrate, dissipate, or to go back to its place of origin, whether it's the heart of the sun or Venus. It probably depends on a number of factors. But its saving force is no longer needed, so it goes on with its own evolution. Then you have the upper triad directly in contact with the 3 lower bodies of the personality. Now this was always very profound for me because I thought, oh, when you get to a soul level, well, the personality is important, but how important? The personality is important right up to triadic awareness, because those 3 lower principles, lower manas, astral, and physical etheric, with their respective colors, are lower octaves of the upper triad. Now that's very profound. When the mystery schools say, man, know thyself, that's not a trite little metaphor. That is a powerful occult statement, because if you can understand the light of your 3 lower personality vehicles and their emanating notes, you now have what I would call Jacob's ladder to ascend into the upper triad. Because the upper triad and the 3 lower notes, and I apologize for being redundant, but this is so important, is a lesser extension. Okay, and then last, 5, monadic fusion. And here you have the dual tetrahedron, star tetrahedron, and the higher and the lowest are perfectly fused, and you have a man or woman in incarnation that is monadically conscious. I'm not going to read this on the left, other than I would say, this is a quote from DK, all is symbol, and the symbols must be mastered. And remember what HPB said about symbols. She said to her students, I can give you the keys to the mystery, but only you can turn the key, and the key has to be turned 7 times. So what we have here on the right is the upper triad, the A, the lower triad symbolized by the M, in the middle, the U. And when that upper and lower come together, you have liberation, you have fire. Higher fire, lower fire. 3rd initiation, and afterwards. This is where the great Kundalini has its uprising, and the higher and lower are perfectly connected, ray 7 and ray 1. The A relates to the will aspect, the U relates to the consciousness or Christ aspect, and the M, the matter aspect. Why am I going to emphasize spherical or circular ray charts? Because the rays and planes have a fluidic quality that can be represented better by waves, spirals, and spheres. What we have been given in the Ageless Wisdom teachings for the most part, and I don't say this with any sense of criticism, is text. Now, because of the modern technological age we live in, we can take these same teachings and not only show them graphically, but animate them. Motion is so important, and motion will often draw you closer to the truth than libraries of words. But I don't say that critically because we need to keep the lower mind in a healthy state. Why is nature such an exquisite expression of divinity? The clouds rolling by, wind passing through the reeds or high grass, or water rhythmically, sun beaming off water. Because of the fluidic nature, they invoke what we are, what's inside of us. Motion is the single most important dynamic to understand when studying hidden energies and forces that are yet to be fully revealed. And why don't we know? Because they didn't have the tools and technologies way back when. These, I don't know who did this, but if anybody knows the author, I'd like to give him credit. It shows the three aspects of ray 1, 2, and 3. So when you see something spinning in an orbit, rotary motion, that's the third aspect of divinity. Yet that motion can go on endlessly unless there's not an intervention by another principle. And what is that? Cyclic spiral motion. If you spin something fast enough, it will generate a vortex. And what's the most dynamic aspect of a vortex? Is that a vortex, to quote the Tibetan, in the middle of a vortex you have a vacuum. And nature abhors a vacuum. And that vacuum is what pulls energy and force from the next higher level. Because you have to imagine the constitution of men and women as 7 spheres. How does one sphere communicate with another sphere? What's the dynamic? What's the crossover point? It's motion. And when you, even in your triangle work, you have 3 points of a triangle, and each point is seated in a different level of energy. And so you make your alignment, you send the energies around, but over time, if you get proficient at that, the energy circulating that around that triangle will become so fast, it creates the vortex. And the vortex being sort of seamless, like throwing stuff in your blender, it can create a downpouring and an upswelling from the highest to the lowest levels. And of course you have Shiva, will, which is the point within the center, the principle of directed purpose, the place of pure being that is motivating all the different Davic and elemental substance into these different configurations. Okay, this is a quote from DK. The 7 rays may be regarded as bands of 7 colors circling and continuously shifting and moving through the planes back to their originating source. The bands of color form a circulating ring which, moving at different rates of vibration, passes through all the planes, circling down and up again. These colored rings do not follow a straight, unimpeded course, but interweave in a most curious manner, blending with each other and absorbing each other in stated cycles. Okay, here's the rays on the left and here's the planes on the right. Now imagine the rays as circles or spheres, they're actually spheres, passing, 7 rays passing through 7 spheres. That is a pretty powerful visualization. And as the rays and planes interweave, wherever they cross over each other, a point of light flashes forth. And this is what initiation is. It's the fusion of a positive, the rays, and a negative pole, the planes, coming into each other's area of experience. They share each other's mystery. Okay, we're back to the six-fold ray chart, and this is what it actually looks like. This is my six-fold chart. And I would like to impress everyone here that some of these ideas are original of mine and that I struggled for many lifetimes to unearth them, but that is not the case. Almost everything I say here is taken directly from the Tibetan, paraphrased, stepped down, connected in different ways, so it sort of makes sense because a lot of this is sort of scattered around. So I want you to think of your ray chart now, and I want you to think of it as a circular entity, as a composite, a one life made up of independent cells, spheres, or circles, but each one having its own autonomy. Now, as you undergo the initiatory experience, these rays begin to overlap, interpenetrate, and blend. So what you get is a composite, not only of the original 7 rays, but you get a composite of what DK calls mutated colors as one overlaps the other. Remember, these are spheres. These are concentric circles that are in motion. So you can see you get additional colors. Blue and green, you get aqua. You get turquoise. Pink and blue, you get shades of purple and violet. You know, people often meditate and they say, oh, I saw this gorgeous color, it was so incredible. But it doesn't fit into the 7 rays that I've been taught. It's because of mutated colors. How each ray influences another ray. Now, technically how that works, visually explains it better, but I'm just going to throw in a little 5th ray here, is that every ray in every plane has 7 subplanes and 7 subrays. That's how they communicate amongst themselves. Because the first ray, it connects with the first ray of all the other rays on the subplane level. And we're going to show that visually. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask everybody to forget everything I just said, and this is a mini meditation that we're coming up for. And I want you to relax, and I want you to breathe into it. And it's all right if you want to analyze it, but with all sincerity, if you feel the lower mind sort of losing its normal moorings, it's all right. Just relax, enjoy it, breathe evenly and deeply. Because we're going to see this chart in motion. Remember now, even though we're taught to work from below up through all these ray initiations and developments, actually it's happening from above down. So when you see the next image in animation, it starts at the very center, which is the monadic life, and it moves out in waves cyclically.
Tatsavituvare vareniam, parvore vasyadimai, Yona prachodaya, Om Bhurvasvaha Tatsavitu Vareniam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimai, Dhiyo Yona Prachodaya. Svaha Tatsavitu Vareniam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimai, Dhiyo Yona Prachodaya. Om Bhurvasvaha Tatsavitu Vareniam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimai, Dhiyo Yona Prachodaya. Om Bhurvasvaha Tatsavitu Vareniam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimai, Dhiyo Yona Prachodaya. Om Bhurvasvaha.
The next animation that we're going to see is similar to this, only instead of an individual person, it's going to show the solar logos, the 7 heavenly men, the different ashrams, under the impact of probably the cosmic astral plane pouring through the sun in its 3 aspects, and then pouring out through all these different outposts right down to average humanity. But I want to read this quote first. These multitudes of egoic groups form a radiant, interlocking whole. Though all are diverse, excuse me, and differing both as to their point of development and their secondary coloring, just as the petals in the egoic lotus of the incarnating jivas unfold in differing order and at different periods, so the egoic groups also unfold diversely as to time and sequence. This produces a wonderful appearance. Again, just as the master can, by studying the group or larger lotus of which he is a part, ascertain the condition of the human units who go into its constitution, so the planetary logos can ascertain through conscious identification, note the term, the condition of the various groups through whom his work must be accomplished. So this is the basic chart that we're going to use to do the animation, but I want you to just briefly see. Solar logos, 7 sacred planets next to the large numbers, and then you have the 7 masters ashrams, and then going out into the 49 sub-ashrams. We're removing the text. So again, relax, take a deep breath, make this into a meditation. going to skip ahead slightly. We've often been given symbols of the 7 rays, like white light passing through a prism, and then it breaks into the seven lesser rays. This image is an opportunity to see the 7 rays as a drop in a limpid pool, to quote the Tibetan. And in the very center is the 7 rays, and each ring is another 7 rays. But as the concentric circles go out, they become diminished in radiance. They become lesser in beauty and sound until they become barely visible and barely recognized and known by the inner spirit, that inner core. And humanity finds itself on the outermost ring, struggling to understand its life and its work. And when it can tune through visualization, alignment, and meditation with the next ray, according to their respective coloring, they will jump to the next ring. You see that in physics. On atomic and subatomic levels, there are these conical shells or radiatory bands. When they're sufficiently stimulated by heat or light or radiation, they can no longer stay in their confined area. They jump to the next band. That's really what initiation is, going radiatory and jumping exponentially to the next level. Okay, great. I have a few more to share, but I'm going to do that, and I'm going to open up. We have 3 minutes to any questions or any comments that people would like to make on this presentation or something that they saw. You can put the lights up. Yes?
Are these on your website, these little videos?
They'll end up, they are, actually. These have been woven into some PowerPoints that now are at Makara. So you can go there, and there's literally hundreds of them. Excellent. I'm 17 seconds over, and that may be a record for me. Thank you.